On behalf of the Professional Baseball Strength and Conditioning Coaches Society, I'd like to welcome you to the PBSCCS Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Messina. All right, everybody, I'm here with Derek Cantieni of the Seattle Mariners organization. Derek, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate your time. Tell the listeners about yourself, if you would, please.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. First of all, it's obviously a great thing you're doing with the podcast, getting all the strength coaches in the PBSCCS and society kind of out there. So again, Derek Cantieni, Major League Strength Coach with Seattle Mariners. My role coming in, they wanted a dual certified strength coach, so I'm also a certified athletic trainer. Because part of my role is to work with our rehab guys, so to be an extra set of hands if I need to, but also just really take them through the step-by-step process of going from rehabilitation to a full swing workout program. So that's kind of like sums up my responsibility, and also assisting in the weight room on the day-to-day stuff with program building and things of that nature.
Are you ever getting pulled away from strength and conditioning, or is that kind of your primary thing, is strength and conditioning?
Yeah, primary strength conditioning. More so, I don't typically travel with the team because our rehab guys will stay back in Seattle. So it'd be myself and a physical therapist that would stay back. And depending on the numbers, sometimes I'd go in and just be the extra set of hands to do, some kind of modality or some manual stuff. But still, my main focus is, the weight room.
Gotcha. Okay. And how about your journey up to this role?
Oh man, my path is definitely not the typical path. So out of college, I went to school at San Diego State, became said athletic training major, so got certified. After I got out of college, was kind of just didn't really want to go to graduate school and didn't know if I wanted to be an athletic trainer. So I approached the strength coach at University of San Diego. His name is Shannon Turley, and was kind of saw about coming on as an unpaid intern, which just by circumstance turned into a full-time position within about 30 days because people that were there that just took other positions or left. So from going to unpaid intern to a full-time college strength conditioning coach within 30 days, leading into a season in August is not typical. So that was where I started my career there. Was there for about 4.5 years. So working with 17 varsity sports, men's and women's, year-round programs. After that, I got my first job in baseball. So I started in high A with the San Diego Padres. The next 2 years, I was in double A with them. Then in the next year, I went with the Oakland A's and was in triple A with them. And about that time, I decided just to kind of put my family a little more first than my career. So I decided to get out of baseball. So I went to try to work in the private sector. Just trying to train kids in San Diego area, which is a lot different beast when you're trying to market yourself out to everybody and try to draw them in. There's a lot of factors that go into it you don't think about until you get into it. It's like, oh man, this is a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. So while I was doing that, I actually started working at a high school after school program as a strength coach. And then it just so happened at that time, San Diego school district opened up some part-time athletic training positions at different high schools. And the high school I was working at was one of them. So I became their first athletic trainer. It was a part-time position, I think 15, 20 hours a week. So I did that for about, I think, 2.5 years. And then, I was looking at different career paths that might be said in teaching or even like firefighting. And then the position with the Mariners came up, and someone that I had met and working in the minor leagues just kind of notified me like, hey, if you want to get back into baseball, the Mariners want to have a CSCS ATC. So I decided to put my hat in there and find out what happened. And so I interviewed during spring training that year, and then I got hired. So it was in 2018. So my first day on the job was the day before opening day. So I fly to Seattle and really met my boss at the time for the first time. And then I just started meeting all the players like, hey, I'm the new assistant strength coach. Like, nice to meet you guys. So that's definitely not the typical path I think a lot of people take. So it's unique to me, but yeah, that's how I got here.
My first day in pro ball was in the middle of spring training, but I was rookie ball. I can only imagine like that first day just being like the day before opening day and just like new org, like been out for a couple years, like straight drinking from the fire hose.
Right.
Did it take you a little time to like adjust back, or were you just it just came right back to you right away? Guys were cool with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, working at different levels, I think coaching is still kind of coaching and just kind of relating to people. So it was, just more about say, hey, like here's who I am, and like just kind of get the ball rolling, see how obviously they do things, and getting to learn some of their guys' routines. But we had a lot of good players who were very welcoming. So I just kind of said, hang out with them a little bit, see how they do, and see if I can help them. I guess luckily we did have like that first week was a homestand, but then followed by a road trip. So it was like kind of like you get kind of thrown in the fire for a few days, and the team travels, and it's like I didn't travel, so it's like I get to kind of then take that deep breath, and they come back, and then really kind of get going.
So that's been that way the whole time you've been there. You don't travel when they go on the road. You stay back with the rehab guys.
It has evolved a little bit. I did so like my first year was no travel. The second year, I think I traveled on one trip, and I think the next year was the COVID year where I didn't travel. And then the past couple of seasons, I traveled a little bit more so this past year than in the past.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I was just saying, I feel like that's kind of fluid, right? Like sometimes you don't have the rehab guys and like maybe staying back, like there's not a lot to do, or then other times
Yeah,
there's like a ton of guys that need help and it's like, hey, we we need all hands on deck. Can you stay
right,
behind? So
exactly.
um gotcha. Interesting. Okay, so I want to talk about the playoff run this year. You guys had, a great season. First of all,
Mhm.
congrats on that. Awesome
Yeah,
to
thank you.
watch from afar. And just watching the playoff games on TV. My wife especially is rooting for the Mariners, and it was cool to see you guys win that series and everything. And I just want to talk about it, man. It's been a
Yeah.
long time since the Mariners were in, and just kind of going over like the atmosphere you were in, and just all of that in the playoffs. So just floor is yours, man, to just kind
Yeah.
of share your experience.
Yeah, it was the first year in 18, we were kind of in the hunt late in the season, and so you kind of got a little inkling of what the energy kind of gets like when you're a contending team. We ended up falling short, and then we the following seasons we went into kind of that reimagining, restructuring, rebuilding kind of mode that lasted up until like last season, where I don't think maybe we were supposed to kind of hit that year, but we ended up winning 90 games last year. We're in contention for a playoff spot up to the very last weekend. And so again, you just kind of see that energy kind of building up towards the end of the season, and seeing, what kind of a city, Seattle is as far as like for sports teams. You see like the Seahawks talk about the 12s and, all those things, and like they have a really good energy. So just kind of seeing that start to kind of come around like the baseball team was really exciting. And then, coming this year, we actually had a little more expectation. And so hit a kind of a rough patch early on, but then we really hit our stride mid-season. And I mean, you could just kind of feel the excitement, building, building, building. And, obviously with the playoff format this year being different, we had to go on the road for what could have been a 3-game series in Toronto. So there's a chance that we didn't even have a playoff game, in Seattle, which would have been a kind of travesty to put it like that. But, we did go the next round, played Houston. We only hosted one playoff game in Seattle, but I mean, the energy, I mean, it was indescribable. I mean, we ended up playing an 18-inning game, and the fans did not stop standing from the first pitch to the last pitch. And I think it ended up being like a 5-6 hour game, and just you can kind of feel like as it was building, it was kind of waiting for like, oh, we're gonna get that run. That Houston took the lead. I think everybody was just had to put so much energy into it at that time. It was almost like just it was they were so spent. But yeah, I mean, the excitement building around it. I mean, just hearing the buzz, people, you'd walk around or go to a restaurant, you just hear the buzz of people talking about it. I mean, I'm sure, in Boston, where you've been, they have a lot of success there in a very good sports town. You kind of experienced that yourself, and just to kind of see that, excitement building up and just feeling the energy, every day at the ballpark when, the fans want to come cheer because they expect you to win, expect you to do good. They want to cheer you on. For our players, like it was really, really special.
Yeah, a couple of things for me. One, we were there in June this year, and even then it felt like electric. That was my first
Mhm.
time there, and I was like, man, this place is awesome. And then you bring it up now, and I remember from last year in 21, like right up until those last couple of games of the season,
Right.
there was like that crazy rush of all these teams fighting for the wild card spots. And
Mhm.
I just remember like watching some of the games because we would play East Coast time and then the West Coast games would be on. It was like how crazy the stadium was there and
Oh,
like
yeah.
how into it the city was. And I was like, man, these guys, like if they have a good offseason and make the playoffs next year, this place is going to be
Oh, yeah.
insane for the playoffs. So it was cool to like watch that from afar. And then just, I mean, you talk about energy, like
Mhm.
last year was my first year in the big leagues, and we had the wild card game with the
Right.
Yankees and like all the stars aligned, and that was just unbelievable energy. And then like we beat Tampa, and then we go play Houston in the ALCS. Like that experience is like, now that I had it last year, and then this year we didn't make it, it's like I am just itching to get started again
Oh,
next
yeah.
year. And like
Right.
you know what I mean? Like now
Yeah.
you've experienced it, and you're like, this is what I'm here. Like this is why I'm here. Like this is the
Yes.
long game. Like we need to get going again. I need this in my life. Like even if, and the crazy thing is like the playoffs are so quick, right? It's like
Oh, yeah.
2 weeks of like boom, 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 nonstop, and then it's like you look up and it's over, and it's like it's crazy. One of my really good friends is with Houston. Obviously, they're in the World Series now, and I've just
Mhm.
been messaging with him like, "You doing all right? Like, how's it going?" Like, I know it's probably crazy for you, and then they're in
Mhm.
Philly, and Philly's crazy. Like,
Right.
you just get that really little bit of experience after the 6-7 months of just grinding it out, and it's like, man, I need that again.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Well, because I mean, so baseball's such a grind. You said like it's 6 months every single day, and I think a lot of people, they always ask like, "What's baseball like?" And I always tell them, "Well, it's like Groundhog Day. I mean, every day is the same. And once you get to that playoff experience, like playoff baseball is so different, because like I said, every pitch matters. Like where you say play 162, like you can remember games that through the course of the year, like, oh man, we won that game, or this could have changed everything. But like in the playoffs, like it all matters. And like the energy level, like you don't need anything to motivate you. Like the playoffs themselves is a motivation. Like we're coming to the ballpark today, we're gonna come play, we're gonna compete. And I mean, it's just you can't really just describe it.
yeah, like one of my favorite things during a game is like when a guy really grinds out in at bat, and then he
Mhm.
walks and like he pimps a walk, like he gives a little bat flip, like yeah, I earned that walk.
Yeah.
And like in the playoffs, it feels like every single at bat is like that, right? Like
Right.
during the regular season, like there's kind of those days, the lulls, the good, the bad, the indifferent, and sometimes at bats go by the wayside or innings go
Mhm.
by the wayside, and you don't think twice. But the playoffs, it's like every single at bat, every single pitch, like you said, is
Yeah.
just everybody is locked in. And I can only imagine what it was like for 18 innings in Seattle for that game.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh
sure it
man.
was crazy.
Yeah. Instead it was, you kind of talk about the highs and lows. I mean, you're just on this high for so long, and then it's like, boom, it just comes down. They have to like really kind of like decompress and process just because you're heightened for so long.
How was Toronto when you guys were there? I love when we go to Toronto, especially when they close the dome. It just gets
Mhm.
really loud in there, and like
Yeah.
the fans are really energetic there too. Was
Yeah.
it was that series? You're probably biased. Was it better in Toronto, louder? Or was it better in Seattle when you guys were there?
I mean, yeah, definitely with the roof closed in Toronto, it gets really loud in there. I feel like they had really good energy. They always do. They're always in the game, always on top of all the players, and talking to them and stuff. It was really good. I mean, I would say though, in comparison, I think Houston was a little more intense. I mean, I feel like just obviously with the history they've had, that fan base expects them to like really like win. And I
Mm.
feel like the energy there was way more locked in. But like I said, with Seattle, it's being the first playoff game in 20 years. I mean, we didn't have the roof closed, so like some of the noise gets out, but I mean, it was loud, and you could
Yeah,
feel it like the whole time.
yeah, I could imagine. When we went to Houston last year, I was just telling my wife this the other day. We were watching the game. They have those orange towels,
Oh yeah.
and in the game there were so many people waving the towels that there was this like orange like mist in the air. And I told her it was like when you wake up in the morning and there's kind of a fog and you're
Right.
driving, and it's like it was like that but orange. And like
Right.
they shoot that cannon off when they hit homers, and it is so loud in there.
Yeah.
That place is just crazy. So I
Oh yeah.
I mean, you got three really good environments, right? In Toronto,
Yeah.
Seattle, and Houston for your playoff experience. And now it's like, all right, let's go back. Let's go back in
Yeah.
23, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's the goal, right? We all want to get there. And so like when you have it and then, you want it back. Like this is why you work we put all the work in the off season, then during that season time, because this is where we want to be.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. As soon as the season ended, I was like, all right, let's like, we need to get going next year. Like, I can bypass the off season. But no, it's awesome, man. Like I said, congrats to you guys. It was fun to watch this year. It was fun to watch last year, and hopefully there's more success in the future for you guys. And aside from playing us, obviously, like, But no, just kind of moving along here. Like, what do you believe in within strength and conditioning that others think you are crazy for believing?
I think, I think this maybe was more, say, kind of a crazy thought like a few years ago. I said like through my kind of journey of how I kind of got into strength conditioning and like evolved my philosophy. When I was working at University of San Diego, I got the opportunity to do a master's program, and it was in leadership studies. And through that, my wife, who's a therapist, I did a fellowship through the clinic she was working at. And I learned, it's called applied functional science. It's like Gary Gray is the kind of, I guess, the father of this. And it was just, really all about, getting out of the sagittal plane, which obviously we know, like when we're loading, like squatting, lunging, hinging, a lot of it's always in that sagittal plane. So, back then when I got introduced this method, it's like, well, it just makes so much sense. I mean, the only sport that really stays in this plane is weightlifting. Everything else we do is rotational. So why are we not really kind of focusing in those areas more? And I think when I worked at the college at that time, I was in charge of my own teams, and we had a head guy who had his own teams. And so like I started kind of doing some things that were a little bit different. And I can kind of see him kind of coming out and looking, like not really saying anything, but just had this kind of like look in his face, like, what's this guy doing? And so this is, back in 2000, probably 7 or 8. And I think we've come a long way since then, where I think, now it's not out of the norm to see a guy doing a lateral lunge or doing something that involves like some rotation that's maybe driven from the upper body down into the, the ground, or vice versa. So, I think maybe back then it was crazy, but I think now, it's a little bit more kind of the norm. But that's probably just the one thing I would say. It's a little bit different.
Yeah, I think that too for me is like the biggest change of heart I've had in my career. Is like when I got in, it was like everybody has to squat. Right. Like primary, like if you got like back squat, if you can't front squat, like figure it out. Right. And now I'm like, it's not that I disregard squatting. Like obviously there's a lot of value to it, but
absolutely,
just getting people to move outside of just, hey, if you increase your back squat, I guarantee everything gets better. Like it doesn't solve all the world's issues, just improving your back squat. And I think the thing I'm curious about with you now is, you talk about this being 2007, 2008. Now that we're 2022 or, 15 years, whatever, do you think the pendulum is swinging too far the other way? Like, I feel like every time I'm on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, whatever, it's like, oh, look at this hitting specific drill, pitching specific drill, get you out of sagittal plane. And then all of a sudden, like everything is becoming that. And we're like losing sight of just some basic strength training principles. Like, have you seen it shift that way? Or do you think we're still like kind of in that okay zone of like a good balance? And maybe it's individual person to person, you know what I mean?
I think it is individual, because there's even some coaches I've worked for, I think, not saying they got too far into like getting super functional, but they kind of went away from like the loading and just kind of started going to like swinging the pendulum to that direction, where I'm kind of like, I'm in the middle, like obviously like if you want to load and get stronger, you've got to load. The best way to load is in sagittal plane. It's easier, it's safer, I guess to say. You can put more load on without sacrificing a lot of possible technique. But and then you can kind of supplement that with the the frontal plane, transverse plane type stuff. So I think some people though do try to like, especially on the social media, like it's all about getting clicks, getting likes, shares, whatever. Is they're trying to find their niche, and like they're saying, look, they're doing all these crazy things like staying on Bosu balls and rotating with the barbell or whatever. So obviously like people can go way too far, and I think because they're maybe trying to sell and like, here, we're doing something different, come check it out. But as we kind of know, like, we have to kind of know what's out there, because guys are going to see it and want to like ask about it. But I think, at least for our industry, I think for the most part, we're all kind of going in the middle. And where my personal opinion we should be is, loading appropriately, moving appropriately, and combining those and putting into the best programs we can.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I fall kind of in the gray area of like, I know everybody probably needs some traditional strength and conditioning practices and then some of the out of the box, like maybe weird look, maybe not weird look, but
Yeah.
like figuring out what that balance is for each guy, I think goes a long way. And then, with the social media and people pushing their own businesses and everything, like one, like you said, you have to take it with a grain of salt and you have to understand. Two, you don't know like what their whole program is, right? Like they may just
Right.
put this out of the box exercise online to get clicks,
Mhm.
but really they're doing all the basic strength and conditioning stuff anyways. And
Right.
then three, like you said, guys are going to see it, right? Like if it's out there,
Yeah.
they're going to see it, they're going to ask you about it. So you have to be prepared to have that conversation and understand why it may work, why it may not work. Try it for yourself. Like
Mhm.
just kind of figure out where these things lie in your programming and for your athletes. One of the things that really like bothers me and makes me concerned is like I see somebody post something on say on a Thursday and then on Monday like all these coaches have their whole team doing it, like, oh, I learned
Right.
this from this guy. Like, well, that wasn't in your program before you saw him doing that. So like how did you fit that into your program just randomly, right? Like
Right.
there's no like filtering system for that. And I think that's where we kind of get in trouble is like
Right.
a lot of coaches don't have their own principles and beliefs that they like stand on. And then, okay, maybe I'll try this myself. Yeah, I think this could work with my athletes. Try it. It's
Right.
like oh, I saw this guy. He's got a lot of followers. Boom, I'm in on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you have to vet it, and I think before you have an athlete do anything, you better do it yourself and understand the principle behind the movement you're trying to do. But yeah, just taking it off and cherry picking and like just throwing it in your program without really understanding. I mean, most players nowadays, especially, are asking you why are they doing stuff, and so if you don't have a really good solid answer or foundation of why it's in the program, I mean, that just takes away your credibility.
100%. Yeah, 100. I think players are more curious than ever, at least in my experience, of just like
Absolutely.
why they're doing what they're doing, how the training can help them. And for us, it's good, right? Like if you have
Yeah.
a reason and you have a belief, like, and you get guys to buy into that and you get them the results, right? Like I talk about this with our head guy all the time, Kiyoshi and I, like one, you have to build the environment that brings them to you. And
Hmm.
two, you have to have the program that gets them the results, right? Like if they come to
Right.
you like, all right, I'm going to give you a chance. And then you don't like produce results for them or their results don't come, they're like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But
Right.
if you create the environment and then the program gives them the results that they want, they're going to keep coming back to you 10 times over.
Right.
And they're
Yeah,
probably going to
exactly.
bring their friends too. And then before
Yeah.
you know it, you have a whole group of guys training together. So,
Right.
no, that's really good stuff, man. And it's cool that you got to see it from, pre 2010, like years and years ago, and like how it's evolved over time. And like,
Hmm.
I think personally, like everything kind of swings back and forth, right? Like
Right.
we get away from all the strength and conditioning stuff. And then, guys get injured a lot because they're not loading. They don't have any like tissue tolerance. And then,
Hmm.
all right, well, we just got to load heavy, and then they become really stiff and like non-athletic, and then you go back. And
Yeah.
I think if you just live in that middle, like you're just gonna avoid all of those crazy big
Yeah.
swings.
I mean, there's always things too, like, you've been around long enough, your program does adapt and it changes. And sometimes you can't even go away from some of the foundational things. You're like, oh man, I totally forgot this exercise that's really good for what we're trying to achieve. Like, I'm going to put it back in, because there's so many things out there that you do, like I said, you want to try some new things and adapt. But I mean, it still comes down to the foundational thing. If you want to get stronger, you got to load,
Mhm.
and you can load in different ways. So it just depends on what that athlete needs.
100%. Yeah, I agree 100%. And it's good that like you say that, like you need quality like note taking, you need quality like auditing of your programs, like
Hmm.
you need to have records to like go back on it. But I would agree 100%. There's been tons of times where I look back and I'm like, why did I stop doing this exercise? Like we need to get that. Like me personally, it makes me feel good, but also like I
Right.
would bet it makes the players feel good. Like so for me, when I lift, like I have my paper, I have like 4 different pens, like a color coded system for like notes. And
Right.
so people look at me like, what are you doing? I'm like, dude, I'm preparing for the future because I'm going to forget this. Like I need these notes. I'm not smart enough to remember on my
Oh
own.
man, I got little workout books, these little, about that big notebooks. I've got probably 4 or 5 of them, and they date back for about that many years. And you go back and look at it, sometimes you see like, obviously again, the core principles are still there. This is, for my personal training, but then you see like kind of the evolution of like how it was and how it is now. And like sometimes you want to go back to some of those, more foundational things I used to do, because it's like, oh man, that was really good stuff. Like, why did I get away from that?
100%. Yeah, there's a lot of people that are like, if you don't look at your programs from 10 years ago and cringe, like you're not learning, you're not doing it right. Like I look back from my programs 10 years ago, I'm like, shit, why am I not doing some of these things? Like, yeah, there's things that make me cringe, but also like, why did I bail on this? Like, let me put this back in. So like you said, I think the big core principles, the big philosophies, like if you have something that you stand on and you believe in, all that other stuff kind of filters in and out over time. And if it's 80% solid principles and then 20% of like exploration or different things, like I think you're going to be okay in the long run. All right, everybody, that's going to conclude our episode with Derek. This is going to be part 1 of a 2-part interview. I thought it was awesome to hear about his playoff experience this past year. And for anybody that's a listener who's in professional baseball, just knowing the grind and how long the season is, and then finally being able to experience a postseason run, it really is an awesome experience. And like I said, it was cool to hear what he had to think about it, and all of the energy that he experienced in the different stadiums and everything. So 3 things that I took from Derek in this episode: embrace the uniqueness of your journey, take what you see on social media with a grain of salt, and combining appropriate loading and movement training into a quality program will help to maximize results with your players. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll talk to you again on the next one.